My name is Grace Mitchell, and I'm 34 years old. 3 months ago, I found myself standing outside my sister's $200,000 wedding, while 500 guests celebrated inside, all because she decided I wasn't successful enough to attend. What happened that night would change everything between us, but the real shock was the aftermath. Before I get into it, if you connect with stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members, please like and subscribe. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, let me take you back to that evening. The St. Regis Hotel on Fifth Avenue looked like something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the marble lobby, and I could hear the string quartet warming up in the grand ballroom. My sister, Victoria, had been planning this wedding for 18 months, and from what I'd seen on Instagram, she spared no expense. I had worn a simple black cocktail dress, bought on sale for $200 at Nordstrom Rack. It was perfectly appropriate, or so I thought, until I saw the guests arriving in designer gowns and custom tuxedos. These weren't just wedding guests, they were part of Victoria's new world. Tech executives, venture capitalists, the kind of people whose weekend homes cost more than most people's primary residences. As I approached the check-in desk, I felt out of place, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Grace Mitchell," I said, giving my name to the receptionist. She swiped across her screen twice, her smile faltering slightly. "I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell, but I don't see your name here," she said. "Maybe you're listed under a +1? "No, I RSVP'd directly 2 months ago," I explained, pulling out my phone to show the confirmation. She frowned, clearly uncomfortable, and motioned for me to step aside while she called the wedding coordinator. I knew something was off. Victoria was meticulous about everything, especially something as important as her wedding guest list. My stomach tightened as I moved to the side, watching happy couples check in, all receiving their table assignments. I pulled out my phone and dialed Victoria's number. When she answered, I could hear the excitement in her voice, the bustle of the bridal suite behind her. "Grace, what is it? I'm about to walk down the aisle in 30 minutes, she said, her tone full of anticipation. "Victoria, I'm at the check-in desk. They can't find my name on the list." There was a brief pause, the kind where it seemed like she was considering her response. Then she spoke, her tone cold and dismissive. "Oh, that. Did you really think you'd be invited, Grace?" The words hit me like a slap in the face. "What?" "You sent me an invitation," I said, feeling hurt. "How could you?" "That was before Robert's investors confirmed. Do you understand who's here tonight?" Her voice grew colder, more businesslike. "The founding partner of Sequoia Capital, 3 board members from Goldman Sachs, Robert's entire executive team. I can't have my underemployed sister mingling with these people. It's embarrassing." I stood there stunned. "Underemployed? I've been in real estate for 8 years. This isn't just a side hustle. Real estate is for people who can't handle real careers, Grace." She cut me off, her words sharp. "Look, I'm trying to protect you. Robert's investors need to see that we run with the right crowd. And frankly, a 34-year-old single woman who can barely afford her rent doesn't fit the image we're projecting tonight." Her words stung, but I kept my voice steady. "I understand perfectly," I said. "Good. I knew you would," she responded, her voice now completely detached. "Maybe we can do lunch next month when things calm down." I hung up and stood there for a few moments, just breathing. The receptionist looked at me nervously, but I wasn't paying attention to her anymore. I had just been dismissed by my own sister on the biggest day of her life in front of 500 people who I wasn't even allowed to mingle with. But there was something more. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding. I was being erased from Victoria's life altogether. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about a lifetime of being dismissed, belittled, and looked down upon. I had spent years trying to prove myself to my family, trying to find my place at their table. But now it was clear. I would never be good enough for them. I didn't make a scene. I didn't yell or beg. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out a small cream envelope that had been tucked there for weeks. It wasn't the $500 cash I had planned to give Victoria as a wedding gift. Instead, it contained something far more valuable. Something that would change everything. I handed the envelope to the wedding coordinator and told her to make sure Victoria got it. As I walked out into the chilly October night, I thought about all the times Victoria had belittled my career choice. I'd given up a corporate job in accounting to pursue real estate, and she'd mocked me for it every step of the way. But now, I had a secret that would redefine everything. Something I had earned on my own. I walked away from the St. Regis that night, knowing that I was leaving behind the family that had made me feel small for years. But for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I had learned something crucial in that moment. Some tables aren't worth sitting at. I wasn't going to fight for a seat at theirs anymore. The following days passed in a blur. I tried to move on with my life, focusing on work and my quiet successes. But my phone buzzed incessantly. Every time I looked, there were more missed calls and texts from Victoria, from Mom, from Robert. At first, I ignored them, but eventually I had to face the reality that everything had changed. Victoria had uninvited me from her wedding because I wasn't successful enough in her eyes. And now she wanted to fix things. But what could she possibly say? What could she do that would erase the humiliation and the hurt? I sat in my apartment one afternoon, sorting through contracts for a new property acquisition, when I received a voicemail from my mother. I braced myself and pressed play. "Grace, it's Mom. Where are you? Victoria's having a breakdown. This is her wedding day. Please, you need to explain yourself. Please just call her back." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Explain myself? She had spent my entire life undermining me, comparing me to Victoria, making me feel less than. Now they wanted an explanation? The same family that had turned their back on me when it mattered most. Still, part of me wondered if I should respond. Maybe this was the moment to lay it all out, to let them know exactly what I had achieved and how wrong they were. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had already made my choice. I wasn't going to explain myself to people who had never taken the time to understand me. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah, my cousin. "Family meeting tomorrow night. Mom's freaking out. They want you to come and explain yourself." I took a deep breath. It wasn't about explaining myself anymore. It wasn't about trying to prove something to them. It was about standing firm in my decision. I wasn't going to let them rewrite history or try to manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself. "I'm not coming," I texted back. Sarah responded quickly. "Grace, they don't get it. They think you're punishing Victoria. They think you're being cruel." That was when I realized they would never get it. Victoria wouldn't understand, and neither would Mom or Dad. They would always see me as the failure, the one who couldn't keep up with the traditional path they had all followed. They wouldn't ever see my success as valid unless it fit their narrow idea of what success should look like. The family meeting took place without me. Sarah kept me updated through text. According to her, Victoria had stood in front of the group holding up my business card, reading it aloud like it was some sort of proof that I had betrayed them. "Senior Vice President, Real Estate Acquisitions," she had read, her voice shaking. The room had gone silent as everyone tried to comprehend what was happening. Uncle James had laughed first, incredulously. "You're trying to protect her from investors? This is your sister. She's the senior vice president at Blackstone." Victoria had tried to explain, but it only made things worse. She admitted that she had deliberately removed my name from the guest list. She said she couldn't have me around because I wasn't a part of her world, the world she had spent so long building around her and Robert. The moment that really struck me was when my Aunt Patricia asked, "What kind of family operates like that? You uninvited your own sister from your wedding?" At that moment, something shifted. The truth began to unravel. Robert, who had never seen the real me, tried to salvage the situation by saying, We didn't know about her position. If we had known, we would have invited her. But it was too late. The truth was out there now. My family could no longer ignore my success. Even Victoria's closest friends were now questioning her decisions. I had made my decision, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I had walked away from the toxic relationships that had held me back for so long, and I wasn't going to let guilt or shame drag me back into that world. Over the next few days, I continued to ignore the calls and texts. But one afternoon, I found myself staring at a message from Victoria that I hadn't expected. She had sent it 2 days after the wedding. I think about that night every day. I'm in therapy now. I've been learning about toxic family patterns. I was wrong about everything. I miss you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to respond. Part of me wanted to say, "You hurt me. You erased me from your life for no reason. You didn't see my worth." But I didn't. Instead, I simply closed the message and set my phone down. What did I have to gain from opening old wounds? I had already made my peace. The woman who had once been my sister, the one who mocked my career and belittled my worth, was no longer the person I needed in my life. She had made her choices, and now it was my turn to move forward, free from the weight of her expectations. A week later, I received a package at work. Inside was a letter from Victoria. Her handwriting was familiar, yet it seemed distant, like a memory from another lifetime. She apologized, not just for uninviting me to her wedding, but for everything. She admitted that she had been wrong, that she had let her insecurities blind her to the value I had always had. She said she understood now that success wasn't about titles, salaries, or possessions. It was about being the kind of person others wanted to celebrate. I read the letter several times, but I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't sure if I wanted to forgive her, or if I even could. But I knew one thing. Her apology, as heartfelt as it was, couldn't erase the years of hurt. It couldn't undo the damage that had been done when she tried to strip me of my dignity. A few weeks passed, and I continued to focus on my career. The world I had built for myself was now mine to enjoy, and for the first time, I was living without looking over my shoulder or worrying about what others thought of me. At work, things were moving quickly. Blackstone had promoted me to senior vice president, a position that came with immense responsibility and a level of respect I'd never thought possible. I was managing a $500 million portfolio of luxury properties in the tri-state area. My career had soared to heights my family had once dismissed as impossible. And yet, despite my success, the weight of family rejection was always there, lingering in the background. Victoria's apology had hit me harder than I expected, but it didn't change the course I had set for myself. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolute. I couldn't go back to the family who had excluded me, the family that had always made me feel like I wasn't enough. It wasn't that I had stopped loving them, it was that I had stopped letting their opinions define me. One morning, as I sat in my corner office overlooking Park Avenue, my assistant, James, walked in with a piece of paper in his hand. "Miss Mitchell, I have something for you," he said, his usual professionalism masking the surprise in his voice. I glanced up at him, curious. He handed me the paper. It was an article from the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, "The New Faces of Real Estate, Rising Stars You Should Know." And there, in the middle of the page, was my name. I'd known that my career was progressing rapidly, but seeing it in print like this, on such a prestigious platform, was a new reality. I felt a sense of pride, but also a sense of finality. It was the recognition I had wanted my family to give me for so long, but now I didn't need it. As I stared at the article, I thought back to the years when I had worked tirelessly, trying to prove myself in a world that had never taken me seriously. Victoria had always been the golden child, the one with the MBA, the one who had everything figured out. She was the one who everyone in the family had compared me to, the one who I had always tried to live up to. But now, I realized something. I wasn't competing with her anymore. I was competing with myself. I was pushing myself to be the best version of Grace Mitchell, and I was succeeding. And that was all that mattered. That afternoon, Sarah called. Grace, I have to tell you, Victoria just announced she's taking a mental health break from work. The pressure of everything that happened with the wedding has really gotten to her. I paused, letting the words sink in. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then the reality hit me. Victoria had spent years pushing me to the margins of our family, only to find herself unraveling under the weight of her own expectations. It wasn't that I wanted her to fail, but I couldn't help but feel like there was a lesson here. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I hope she gets the help she needs. The conversation turned to other topics, and I tried to move on, but I couldn't shake the feeling of satisfaction that settled deep in my chest. I had spent so many years trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine, trying to win approval from a family that had never truly seen me for who I was. But now, I was carving my own path. I was building something real, something that no one could take away from me. A few days later, I received another call from Victoria. This time, I wasn't sure how to react. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. Grace, I know I've hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just want you to know that I understand now. What I did to you, the way I treated you, it was wrong. I was so focused on what I thought I wanted, on impressing everyone else, that I forgot about the one person who really mattered. You. I sat silently, processing her words. For a moment, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she had changed, that she had finally learned the value of what she had lost. But then, I remembered everything. The years of dismissals, the hurt, the uninvitation, the way she had treated me like I was invisible. It was hard to just let all of that go. I appreciate your apology, Victoria, I finally said, my voice steady. But I can't go back to the way things were. I've built a life that's mine, one that doesn't depend on your approval. There was a long pause before she spoke again. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I get it now. I see you, Grace. I see your worth. It was the acknowledgement I had been waiting for all these years, but it didn't feel as triumphant as I thought it would. Instead, it felt like a chapter closing, a final goodbye. I'm glad you see it, I said softly. But it's too late. I've moved on. I'm living my life and I'm proud of who I've become. I hope you can find that peace too. With that, I ended the call. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. It was closure, and that was enough. The days that followed were peaceful. I focused on work, on my new relationships, and on the life I had built for myself. I spent time with David, the architect I had started dating shortly after cutting ties with my family. He was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. Kind, supportive, and deeply appreciative of who I was, not what I could provide. A few months later, I received an unexpected call from Maria Santos, the director of the women's shelter I had donated the Riverside penthouse to. Grace, I just wanted to let you know that the sale of the penthouse went through. It sold for $3.2 million. The market went up since your donation. I felt a rush of warmth spread through me. The money would fund the shelter for the next 7 years and provide job training programs for women who needed a fresh start. That was success, real, tangible success that made a difference. And it was my success, not anyone else's. Maria's voice crackled through the phone as she added, "You've already helped 43 women find a new beginning. I just wanted you to know how much of an impact you've made." Thank you, Maria. That's all I need to know. As I hung up, I realized that for the first time, I wasn't looking for validation. I didn't need anyone to tell me that I was enough. I already knew it. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Dinner at 8, that new place in Soho. Perfect. Love you." I smiled and replied, "Love you too." The next few months flew by. Work at Blackstone was exhilarating, The new responsibilities kept me busy, but it was the personal growth I'd experienced that truly marked a change in my life. I no longer found myself constantly looking for approval from anyone, not from my family, not from Victoria, not from anyone. I had learned that success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above the challenges life threw my way. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly proud of who I had become. I spent my days navigating multi-million-dollar real estate deals, growing my portfolio, and establishing myself as a key player in the industry. But every so often, a text or a voicemail from Victoria would pop up on my phone. I never responded, but I couldn't completely erase the thoughts that flooded my mind each time her name appeared on my screen. She had spent so many years dismissing me, telling me I wasn't enough. But now that she had learned the hard way what it truly meant to lose someone who had been there all along, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. I had made my choice. I had chosen self-respect over the toxic ties that had bound me to a version of family that never truly understood or valued me. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk reviewing contracts, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at it and saw it was a message from Sarah, my cousin, the only family member who had supported me unconditionally. She had reached out in the past when everything with Victoria had first happened, and she had stayed in touch, offering encouragement and understanding. Grace, the message read. Victoria just told everyone you gave away the penthouse to charity. She's devastated. She's been calling everyone. They all want to know why you didn't give it to her. Why you didn't give her the dream home. I can't believe she's still holding on to this. I paused for a moment, a mix of emotions washing over me. The penthouse wasn't just a gift. It had represented everything I had accomplished on my own. It was more than a piece of real estate. It was proof that I had carved my own path, that I didn't need to rely on anyone's approval, let alone someone who had spent my entire life treating me like an afterthought. It was also a powerful reminder that my family's perception of success was limited. They saw material wealth and titles as the ultimate measure of achievement, but they couldn't see what I had built beyond the surface. They couldn't see the relationships I had cultivated, the lives I had changed, or the fulfillment I found in helping others, like the women who would now find refuge in that penthouse. I thought about how much time I had spent chasing their approval, how many Christmas dinners had been tainted by comparisons, how many family events had left me feeling invisible. And then I realized none of it mattered anymore. My worth had never depended on them, and certainly not on their narrow, limited definition of success. I had made my own definition, and it was one I was proud of. Sarah's message continued. She's asking for a meeting, Grace. She's really sorry. She wants to make things right. She says she understands now. But I know you're probably not ready to hear that. The words echoed in my mind. She says she understands now. That was the part that stung the most. It was the realization that she had spent so many years blind to the truth. But what was the point of understanding now? What good was it if the damage had already been done? I set my phone down and sighed, staring out the window of my corner office. The view was incredible, stretching from Central Park to the Hudson River, a reminder of how far I had come. I had built a life on my own terms, a life I didn't need to justify to anyone. That evening, as I sat down to dinner with David, I reflected on everything that had happened. He could tell I was distracted, so he gently asked, "You're thinking about her again, aren't you?" I nodded, pushing my food around on my plate. "Yeah, I don't know. I'm done with it. But I can't help but feel like she's still trying to pull me back into that world. The world where she didn't see me, where my worth was defined by how much money I made or who I knew." David reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "Grace, you've built something amazing, and from everything I've seen, it's not about the money. It's about the life you've created. You don't need to go back to that. You've moved forward. And sometimes, that means leaving people behind, even if they're family." I squeezed his hand. feeling the warmth of his support. I know, it's just, part of me still feels like there's something I'm supposed to say, something I'm supposed to do to fix it. But I've realized that I don't have to fix anything. It's their problem, not mine. David smiled. Exactly. You've done enough. You've given everything you had. Now it's time for you to take care of you. His words resonated deeply with me. I had spent so many years trying to fix things, trying to make my family see me, trying to prove that I wasn't a failure. But now, I realized that I didn't need to prove anything. My success, my happiness, it was all mine. And I had worked hard for it. As the evening went on, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I wasn't angry anymore, just clear. I had found my place in the world, and it wasn't with people who couldn't see my worth. It was with the ones who had always been there for me. The ones who saw me for who I truly was. Someone who was worthy of love, respect, and success, no matter what anyone else thought. And that, in the end, was the most powerful realization of all. The following weeks were a mix of personal and professional milestones. My role at Blackstone continued to expand, and every day brought new challenges that I was more than capable of handling. But as my career grew, my personal life flourished in ways I hadn't expected. The emotional weight of family rejection started to feel lighter, replaced by the warmth of relationships I had nurtured outside of the toxic cycle that had once defined me. David and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm, our bond growing stronger with each passing day. I had never thought that finding someone who truly valued me, someone who saw me for who I was, would be this fulfilling. He wasn't impressed by titles or wealth, but by who I was as a person. It was a refreshing change from the scrutiny I had faced for years, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had a real partner, someone who celebrated my successes and supported me through my struggles without ever asking for anything in return. But Victoria's attempts at reconciliation didn't stop. Every few weeks, there would be a new message or voicemail filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. At first, I felt a pang of sadness, but I realized that the person who had hurt me so deeply wasn't the same person reaching out now. The Victoria of my past was a person whose vision of success was clouded by insecurities and competition. The new Victoria was someone who had learned, the hard way, that success wasn't about who had the biggest paycheck or the fanciest title. She had learned that real success, the kind that mattered, was about being the person who made a difference in the lives of others. But her apology, though heartfelt, wasn't enough to erase the years of hurt and rejection. I remembered the letter she had sent, the one where she admitted that she understood now. She had finally seen my worth. But seeing it now, after everything that had happened, felt like too little, too late. I wasn't angry, just resolute. I had already moved on, already built a life that didn't depend on her approval. And I realized something else. Forgiveness wasn't something I owed to her. It was something I owed to myself. And I had already forgiven myself for staying in a toxic environment for so long. I had already let go of the need to seek validation from a family that had never understood me. One evening, as I sat in my office reviewing a new set of proposals for a luxury development, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Sarah. "She's coming to New York, Grace. Victoria wants to meet with you. She's asking for one last chance to talk. She says she's changed and she wants to see you." I hesitated for a moment. The truth was, I wasn't sure what to feel. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to see if she was sincere. Another part of me wanted to keep walking forward, leaving the past where it belonged, behind me. I thought about everything that had happened, about the years of feeling invisible, about the uninvitation, and about the pain that had followed me for so long. But I also thought about how far I had come. I wasn't the same person I had been before, and I didn't need her validation anymore. I took a deep breath, then typed a response to Sarah. "I don't need to meet her. I've made my peace. Tell her I wish her well, but my life has moved on. It's time for me to keep living it, without looking back. The next few weeks passed quietly. I continued to work, to build, to live. David and I traveled to the Hamptons for a weekend getaway, and I finally felt the weight of years of uncertainty begin to lift. I wasn't just living for myself. I was living in a way that reflected my true values: integrity, kindness, and self-respect. Then, one day, a small envelope arrived at my office. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Victoria. Inside, I found a handwritten note that read, "I've been thinking about what you said, about how some bridges are meant to burn. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I was blind to your worth, and it's only now that I see the truth. I've lost you, and it's my fault. I'll always regret how I treated you, but I will never forget you. I hope one day you can forgive me, but I understand if you can't. You've shown me the most valuable lesson of all. Success isn't about impressing others. It's about being true to yourself. You've always known that, and I never saw it." I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of closure. I wasn't sure what the future held for Victoria and me, but I knew one thing for sure. I had already moved on. My life was mine, not defined by her or by anyone else. The next day, I sent a simple response to her letter. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say I was ready to welcome her back into my life. Instead, I wrote, "I'm glad you found the clarity you needed. I wish you the best in everything you do." I knew that was all I could give. It wasn't about closure or finality. It was about the fact that I had learned to set boundaries, to protect my peace, and to let go of what no longer served me. And that was enough. As the months passed, Victoria's name became less and less a part of my thoughts. I was no longer tethered to the past. I had created a life that reflected who I truly was, and it was a life filled with people who saw me, appreciated me, and valued me for exactly who I was. And that, I realized, was the greatest success of all. Life had taught me that boundaries are not just walls, they are the bridges to self-respect, and that the most powerful thing you can do for yourself is walk away from relationships that diminish your worth, no matter how difficult it may be. If this story resonates with you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message, that they are already enough, just as they are. Remember to subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries, reclaiming your worth, and choosing your own path.